Hello, and welcome to episode 262 of the Casual Try Hard podcast. I'm Brian,
And I'm James.
and today, maybe part one, maybe the only part, we will see, of Murders at Karlov Manor, set review, slash, just cards we find interesting, cards we find exciting, cards that might
Yeah.
have a home, just like cards.
Just cards. Kind of the show that we always do. Not really too much different, although I'm going to talk about a couple things that I found different about how I perceive this set. But yeah, basically the same way we always do it. Maybe we'll get through the whole list. I think there's 28 cards here. Got kind of a late start, so maybe we won't get through the whole list. We'll see where we end up. So yeah,
Yeah, so
that's what the show's about.
if you want to reach out to us, if you're really committed to a part two, you can send us cards you want us to talk about that we may have missed today. Anywhere on social media, Facebook, Discord, X go and give it to you.
Right.
Email, whatever you're feeling. All those links are in the description. So if there's hey man, I really wish you guys would have talked about thing, there's still time.
There's still time. Hit us up. Let us know. If you want to support the show, a couple ways you can do it. First is no cost to you at all. It's our TCG player affiliate link. CasualTryHard.com/TCG. You're going to be buying Magic products anyway. TCG is a pretty good place to get them. Get some good prices, reasonably quick shipping. Follow that link over to TCG Player, do your shopping, and you'll help to support the show. Like I said, doesn't cost you guys anything extra. They don't charge you extra for using our affiliate link. They just give us a little cut of the profit to help us out. So we would appreciate it if you use that. Also, our Patreon, if you want to support us more directly, patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Sign up and you get to hear us ramble about all manner of Magic and / or more commonly not Magic related things. About another hour of content out of us every week that's completely random, unscripted, unedited. Who knows what we're going to talk about?
Hey, if you're a patron and you you are a plumber and you really want to clarify some of our toilet talk, please let us know. Why do I have to have a tank on my toilet? I need answers.
Riveting content in the pre-show.
Riveting content. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. I had to replace the flap and was none too happy about it.
Yeah. Also, patrons get access to our show notes, so you get a sneak peek about what the show is going to be about. And sometimes when we do bullet point episodes, kind of like this one, but we do it a couple other times also. Sometimes it's nice to have a handy reference guide to follow around, so you can use the show notes as a reference guide as well. If any of that sounds good, or if you just want to support the show, patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. You can chip in as much as you feel like contributing, and it would really help us out.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, patrons. You're the best.
Thank you. All right. So, what did you want to open with? Because you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was before show stuff or after show stuff, but I had some thoughts. Just kind of going through the way I approach these episodes is, I think more and more as time has gone on, I've kind of not been as engaged with spoiler season. I don't know if that's because I'm disenfranchised with Wizards, or if because the way I approach Magic is different, or a combination of the two, or whatever it is. But I used to get super hyped for spoiler season and was always the first person posting new cards in our group chats or whatever. But I find myself not really following as close anymore. And for the last, I don't know, however many releases, I have, paid attention like I did this time, but not gone super deep into the weeds with how spoilers came out. And then I would gather cards people wanted to hear about from our Discord, and Brian would send me some cards, and I would put those into a document and kind of arrange them in a logical order, and then go through the card file and just pick out all of the cards that I thought were interesting. Delete out the duplicates from what I thought interesting and what Brian did and what you guys at home did, and then that's how I would come up with my list. So I was going through this card file, and the there wasn't a whole lot I was overly excited to be playing with. No, is that because this set's a dud, or is that because like my disenfranchisement is growing?
Um, I think it could be both. And
Okay.
like this set, there's like our experience with Morph, the last time we had Morph, was outside of like 3 cards, Morphs didn't get played, right?
Right.
Right. You had like the sideboard like protection from dragons reach guy that was white that got some play.
Yep.
And
Hidden
you had,
Dragon Slayer.
yeah, and you had Death Mist Raptor and Den Protector,
Yep.
and that is like, and the only reason Death Mist Raptor got played was because of Den Protector being good
Den
or vice
Protector.
versa,
Right.
right? Like they were dependent on each other. So like from a constructed point of view, right, it feels like there's one whole mechanic that doesn't matter. And I think the clue stuff matters. Maybe not the cards that care about clues, but the cards that make clues. But like we get trinket piece of cardboard every set now. Like think we have blood, food, and clues right now. Oh, and what are they called? Incubate tokens.
Oh yeah, don't forget about them.
Now, granted, we should only
And
have
treasures.
yeah, in treasures. I always don't count treasures because they're now like everywhere. And like we probably shouldn't have blood just because blood should have rotated. But
Yeah.
like we have right now in standard 4 different like make a thing, get value trinket pieces of cardboard, so it's kind of hard to get excited about
Right.
that. And like power 2 or less isn't like a huge hype
Yeah.
thing. So like it feels like there's a lot of them that are like the mechanics aren't super exciting. It might not necessarily be that they're bad, but it's just like you can't get excited for Disguise because we've played Disguise and it's like usually not good enough.
Yeah, and like part of the problem with Morph and Disguise, and I guess Cloak too, is that like we're definitely constructed players 1st and foremost, and like competitive constructed players. And every card you have to look at from an efficiency point of view. Like what does the card do and what's the investment to make it do the thing? And just kind of as a mechanic, Morph and Disguise and I guess kind of Manifest and Cloak as well, like inherently make things less efficient. So they're not at the same power level just as like a matter of the mechanic.
Right. Like I think there's like a card that I don't know what its casting cost is. So it's like when it's like, but it's like more it's undisguised, whatever. Is like 4 and a green, and when it flips over, it like destroys an artifact or enchantment
Yeah.
at like common. So like you put like 7 mana into this, and like we get this effect in like every single set, and it's between like 3 and 5 mana.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the like unmorph, or I'm not gonna not call it unmorph, right?
Yeah.
But like the unmorph effect is usually an ETB, and you had to like tack 3 extra mana onto it and like make it fragile. Right now it's less fragile because it's got ward 2 or whatever, but still like if they know that you like boarded in your like unmorph kill an artifact thing, they can kill it.
Well, I mean, to your point about being fragile, like even though it has ward, it's still fragile. Like you're not putting gray ogres in your deck because they're gonna rumble.
Yeah. And like you pay the 3 mana and you technically have a creature, but if you really need the unmorph effect to matter, you're not going to trade with it. You're not going to like put it at risk. So it is like so like that one doesn't feel like it is a really strong constructed mechanic.
Yeah.
Blue-white detectives, like there might be some individually strong detectives, but like
Right.
that they're this is the only set with detectives.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like that's not gonna work in standard. Suspect is kind of hacky and not going to work in constructed. Right? It is could there be one card that
Mm-hmm.
like is efficient enough that has the word suspect on it so it gets played because it's like efficient enough? Yes.
Yeah.
But like you're not going to do that. And then like the rest of the the rest of the things are all just disguise, like looking at the limited
Right.
archetypes. So it's like, well, these aren't going to, and I guess like blue red artifact sacrifice could maybe work, but like
We'll
that's
see.
not like a cool like mechanic that has like a name,
Right.
right? So it's kind of harder to like to do. So it feels like the mechanics don't translate,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're like, well, why should I care?
Well, so on top, I agree with that. And on top of that, normally, if you've listened to any number of these sorts of episodes that we do, the very last category that we cover are cycles. Well, I didn't include any cycles. I mean, maybe we can probably mention the land cycle because we should
Yeah,
probably mention the land cycle, but I don't think this land cycle is exciting. And I don't think there's actually, normally we get like a big flashy mythic cycle. You know, we had the gods are a common one. If there's gods on a plane, we get the mythic god cycle or whatever.
yeah.
And I mean, I'd have to go back through the card file to tell you what the mythic cycle even is. I have no idea what it is. Is there
Um,
one?
I think the closest you can come is like there's just like a cycle of big creatures, but like there's nothing that unifies them.
Yeah.
It's not like the
Yeah, I
cemetery
mean, I guess there is
trespasser.
a big creature thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but like there's not there's nothing that makes them feel unified.
Right.
And like I don't know, again, like I don't really follow lore, so I don't know
Hmm.
if there is something that like makes that like ties them together
Yeah.
to be like, oh yeah, like those all kind of like make sense as a thing. Yeah, so it doesn't
But
really
like
feel like there's
we
anything.
we have less planeswalkers now, right? We only have one planeswalker,
Mm-hmm.
Kaya. So there's not a whole lot to get excited about. Like you can't get hyped about whatever planeswalkers are coming because there's only one, and you know it's might or might not be good, but that's kind of irrelevant. And then with no mythic cycle, like I don't know, I just felt kind of uninspired when I was going through the card file
There's
trying to
like
write an
nothing to like
episode.
really like tie you to the or like draw you into the set. There's no like
Yeah,
hook.
yeah.
Um,
No, there's some cool cards. Like, don't get me
yeah,
wrong. There's some stuff
like
I want to play with, but it's not. I don't know.
maybe the mythic cycle is the two color. I I guess kind of like the two color, maybe like guild leaders,
Yeah,
maybe
maybe.
like the mole and then Vanifair and like Alquist. Like there are like the gold mythic.
Yeah,
Um, but like I don't even know if that like really even counts. It's weird.
yeah. So I don't know. It was just something I wanted to point out that I'm not super hyped for this set.
Oh,
Not like I
also,
normally am.
yeah, also like cases off also feel kind of like blah.
Yeah, none of them are super exciting.
Like I think there's a few that are like playable in like kind of corner case situations.
Right, but they're not exciting.
Yeah, yeah, you're like I think that sagas like you played them and you knew what you were going to get,
Right.
and like these these like a thing that you see in constructed and even limited, right, is like you need your card to do what you need your card to do when you need
Hmm.
it to do it. And
Correct.
like usually mechanics that require you to put in work don't work. Often the juice is not worth the squeeze,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of these feel like if I play this and then like I don't get to solve it,
Yeah.
like it wasn't worth the card
Right.
for what I
For
got
whatever
from
it
it.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more thing, it's not in the show notes here, but before we move on to my next little generalization aside, tangent, whatever you want to call it, is there was one of our listeners in Discord, aside from having a few cards that they wanted talked about, wanted to talk about, I'm trying to remember how it was phrased, what mechanics were worth their money, I think is how it was phrased. Like buying into a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've covered a lot of them. We did a whole episode on the mechanics, and we've gone over most of them just now from a constructed point of view. But I just wanted to clarify that I don't think that's the correct approach to like buying into a set release is to just buy a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
You should buy cards because the cards are good, not because they have mechanic on them.
Yeah,
So,
it's hard because there are very few times where a mechanic is so good that
yeah.
it carries like mediocre cards,
Hmm.
right? I think the last time like you had
Energy and affinity
and affinity.
comes to mind also.
Yeah, but like and you know,
Those are outliers though, like
they
by
are.
far they're
And
outliers.
like the food cards that matter
Hmm.
are a lot of the commons. Like it's not
Yeah.
like, you know,
Attune
well,
with Aether, Rogue Refiner.
yeah, or uncommons like cat oven,
Hmm.
right? Like those food cards and like in older formats like Asmos are rare,
Yeah.
but
It's propped up by a
Underworld
cookbook
Cookbook
and
and
Ovalchist Daredevil.
Urza Saga, right? But
Yeah.
like there's like other than Saga and Asmo, like all those cards are uncommons, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like you need sometimes it's like the random limited cards that
Hmm.
they like flew a little too close to the sun. Think like
Yeah.
Lucky Clover,
Yep.
where you're like, oh, we done goofed.
Yep.
That was an uncommon because it was supposed to hold the limited archetype together. But like it's very rare that like you could get right on like a what's it called? That you could get right on like, oh hey, this mechanic is worth me like
Right.
is going to be the mechanic they messed up on, or there's like enough here because like there might be a investigate card that's good enough, but
Hmm.
it's good enough because that card's good enough with
Right.
investigate, but it's not going to bring like four investigate cards along with it.
Yeah. And this kind of ties into what I want to talk about next, but what what kind of unifies all of the mechanics that we just spoke of, affinity, food, energy, whatever, is that they're all very parasitic mechanics. Like you have to have critical mass of playable ones,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to work together well. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And parasitic mechanics are really hard to do correctly. That's why there's all these outliers like affinity, and you can kind of call food an outlier as well. Energy is definitely an outlier.
But I mean,
So
even
they,
for food to be good, it took like
yeah,
two Eldraine sets, a Modern Horizon set,
yeah,
and Lord of the Rings to get to that critical mass.
right. What I mean though is, or what I was getting at is that they really try. I mean, obviously, it has to happen once in a while because there's design space that has to be used, but they try and stay away from extremely parasitic mechanics because they're so hard to power balance. And really, like the answer, to this person's question is that I think the only mechanics that you can just blanket buy into a mechanic instead of just good cards are those hyper parasitic ones, and they're hit or miss. Like you can't just buy every card from a parasitic mechanic and think you're going to get a winner, because that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean there are examples of things that are, kind of parasitic mechanics that then don't do anything, that like are really kind of like inbred on them, like not that you like, but like celebrate, right? Like you have to have things that kind of enable it, and then are the payoffs good enough? It's like, oh, there's one good payoff, and like if you were wrong about like which one you thought was the good payoff, or like, oh hey, I think Feasting Troll King's really good, I'm gonna buy 100 of them. Like there was like a 4-day span or like a 3-week span where like 4 years later, where like Feasting Troll King was like a $5 card.
Yeah.
But like you have to hold on to all of them and then like kind of strike in that one little window,
Right.
and that's really hard to do. So
Well, I don't know that this person meant for necessarily a finance
gain?
reason. I think they just meant like where to best put their magic dollars.
Yeah.
Like buying into cards from a set, and like the answer is definitely just buy good cards. Like
Yeah. It also depends on like what your definition of good cards are. Right? Like if you really enjoy, like if you're playing to like win games, right? Then like you kind of just always take the best cards, and then you end up with like Rakdos, where you have like one blood card and one saga and like, one escape card kind of deal.
Yeah.
Right? Where like these are the best cards, but like if you have a certain type of gameplay that you want,
Yeah.
then like, I really like blue red spell stuff, and I think that Melik looks really cool. Like, okay, then buy Melik, but like I don't know if that's the best use of your dollars.
Yeah. Real quick, and then we'll move on. All of those mechanics that you just rattled off that are in Rakdos
Yeah.
are not parasitic mechanics.
Yeah, they all just kind of like
So
allow you to do the best thing
right.
that you can. Like you play the game and get some advantage. I will say, if you are concerned about your magic dollar, more so recently, other than like, let's say the 3 or 4 cards from a set that end up seeing particularly Eternal play or Commander play, everything else trends to 0 and pretty fast.
Yes.
So like, if you have a card that you're like, if you have a card that you think is going to be really good, and you're like, oh, I'm fine with paying $2 for this rare, right? If you're right, maybe it goes to $5, and you're like, oh man, I got a pretty good deal here. But a lot of the time, they go to a quarter.
Right.
Like they all kind of run to a quarter, so it's probably better to wait a few weeks for the set to come out and prices to kind of find their like home.
Yeah.
As opposed to like rush out, and like you stand a greater chance of, I think statistically speaking, you stand a better chance of being wrong than you do of being right.
For sure.
And now granted, like, if you bought Shieldreds at $20 and now they're 100, right? You're happy you bought them at like 20. But I don't know, if you were really excited about a 3-mana red-black Planeswalker and you bought them at like 30 and now they're like 5, you feel real dumb. And like I think there's way more like 30 to 5 or 2 to 50 cents than there are 20 to 80s.
Right.
Right. So like just waiting a little bit and being like, you know what, I don't have to have, these cards opening weekend will save you a lot of money, a lot more than it used to, because of all the different printings and stuff.
Well, so that's kind of the other part of that, is I think that has gotten more common as time has gone on, because Wizards has decided to do like more and more gimmicky stuff to try and move packs. special treatment, serialized cards, limited edition cards, whatever, neon
Board
ink,
games.
board games, whatever you want to call it. And all that, like, the only thing that can do is make everything else cheaper, because its sole goal is to make people buy more packs. And if they're buying more packs to chase whatever thing Wizards decided to print into the set, the only thing that can do is drive the price of everything else down. So
Yeah, and like
keep that in mind.
you definitely have the, what is the most desirable version, and it has stopped being the stock version.
Right.
Right. So those people open the stock version and they're not happy that they got the rare that they wanted for their deck. They're upset they didn't get the right version of that rare. Right. And so, I mean, I've been on my wife got me a box of Phyrexia All Obi-Wan, and I opened a foil super fancy Atraxa, and I was like, I'd much rather have the regular one that looks like a Magic card. And so I sold it and was able to get an Atraxa and a half's worth of value. So it worked out for me, but it's oh, I didn't want this one. And
you would have been excited had you opened the regular one, though.
Yeah, I'd have been like, well, maybe not. I would have been like, oh, cool, this is the one I want.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's more of that or maybe I opened a regular one and then a fancy one. I was like, I'd rather have two regular ones, and then it worked out. But I think there's people that are I really wish I had the fancy one, and they open the regular one and they're like, now I've got to try to sell this and then use that to get, you know what I mean? It's just since there's so many options, there are so many different, instead of there being the foil and the non-foil, and those were your only two options, now there's 8 options of every card. And so now that's splitting the people, right, your customers, into 8 camps.
Yeah.
And I think regular one is getting less people. Or it's getting less people than it got before, just because there are so many other versions.
I mean, another thing that kind of goes along with that, though, is that maybe it's different for Atraxa, but on a lot of the cards, the spread between the versions isn't that big.
No.
You might have a couple dollars between all of the different versions of the card. And if you really want the different version, regardless if it's cheaper or more expensive, you go to your local shopkeep and say, hey, I just opened this, but I want the other version. The shopkeep's got to make a buck, so they're not going to offer you full retail value for the card. They're going to give you 60%, 70% if you're really lucky and have a great store owner. And that doesn't get you, even if you're downgrading, that doesn't get you the card that you want. You can't just trade the better version for the cheaper version straight up. So it's kind of a feel bad.
Yeah. So buy good cards and wait.
Exactly.
Because you'll there will be cases where you look back and go oh, if I would have bought that. Right? I forget who in Discord pre-ordered a bunch of leyline bindings. And then leyline bindings were $20 and was look at me, I'm so good. Which great. But then there's also the other times where oh, I pre-ordered, whatever. I pre-ordered my Obnixilis, and then that looks really bad. And I think there's way more of that than there is
absolutely
feeling like it was a win, which is really different than what it used to be, right? There were definitely spots where you could definitely do all right in that whole gamble, but it's so much harder now that it's just let everything fall out, and if you really like Vanifair, right, that card's probably not going to see a lot of play. It's going to go down substantially.
Yep.
So, all right, with all that, let's work through. Well, you wanted to talk about one gold card that didn't quite make the list.
Well, I have one more quick aside that
Okay.
kind of leads into that gold card. Sorry.
That's all right.
Shows a little weird today. When I was going through this, and I've noticed this over the last few sets, I was talking about getting excited about looking through the card file and excited about spoiler season, yada, yada, yada. it seems like they've been putting some of the best designs as the signpost uncommons. Like some of the most interesting cards in the set have been signposts, not just in this set, but like going back as well, back a few sets. And I don't know, it's just a weird spot to think that I'm more excited about seeing what the signpost uncommons are for a set than what the mythic cycle is going to be.
Yeah, I think that like even if they don't make it as like good limited cards, which like ideally you would hope they would, but even if they don't make it as good limited cards, like having those cards gives you like, oh hey, you open this interesting card. Now you're drafting a different deck than you've ever drafted before. And so like that's valuable for like replayability because, you know, Arena allows you to do way, way, way more drafts. So like,
Right.
you know,
They got to make it interesting over the long haul.
yeah, having those, you know, cards that make you go like, oh, I not drafted this version of green black, or I've not drafted this exact version of red white, is good, and like I think is perhaps you've become more disconnected, right?
It could be too.
You are gravitating to things that look fun or that look interesting, as opposed to the things that are like
Raw power.
this is the most efficient, powerful thing to do for 3 mana currently in standard. You're more like, oh, that would be a fun deck to play. Like you're perhaps getting into more of like a brewer's mindset where like, oh, I wonder what I can do with this. Yeah.
Filthy brewers.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like it's more like, oh, this card looks fun. I wonder what I can do with it, as opposed to, okay, this is the best 2-drop in the format. I'm going to play this. Like,
I mean, I think that's part of it as well, but I do think, like, in general, the signposts have gotten more interesting than they used to be, though.
yeah, I mean, I think they are more interesting. They have on all cards kind of like taken the reins off, and they just kind of do whatever nonsense they want to do. And like a lot of these signpost uncommons would have been rares, not too long ago.
Like the one we're going to talk about.
Yes. So like you have this like interesting card at lower rarity.
Yeah.
And like where that card would have been like a rare or not even printed 5 years ago. Right? So I think that part of it is that. But you are right. They do cooler things.
Yeah.
But like I think there is definitely like a like, oh, I wonder if I can do something fun or interesting with this. Because again, they took the whole like competitive play thing and kind of like drug it out back and shot it. Yeah. And there's none of that anymore.
Now it's just it got infected and it's a zombie.
Yeah. Come to DreamHack. Bright lights and noises. Yeah.
All right. So the one signpost uncommon. We talked about the signpost last week when we did the limited archetypes episode. And I think I mentioned at that point that I really liked this one in particular. And there's been a little bit of buzz around it in the week in between. So we just wanted to mention Insidious Roots.
Yeah, so this is green-black for an enchantment. Creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. And then whenever one or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, put a 0/1 green plant creature create a 0/1 green plant creature token, and then put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control.
Each plant.
So you're effectively, the first plant is a 1/2. And then the next plant you get a 1/2, and then your 1/2 becomes a 2/3.
Yep.
And so on and so on and so on. Like, this is a pretty efficient little engine.
Yes. Kind of almost all wrapped up in one card.
Yeah, like, now, I was watching an Aspiring Spike thing, and he plays a lot of Underworld Cookbook, Oval Chase Daredevil.
Yep.
Every time you discard the Daredevil, you make an artifact, which then puts the Daredevil back in your hand, which would make you a plant. or cat
And make them
oven,
all bigger.
and make them all bigger, or cat oven.
Yep.
This is also perhaps does not work in Yawgmoth, but right, you can undying your young wolf, and instead of getting blood artist triggers, you get insidious root triggers. So
Yep.
like any like undying shenanigans where you get rid of counters or something
Yep.
can then make just like a whole bunch to infinite numbers of. And now it's
It is Undying's the one that puts the +1/+1 counter on it, right?
yes, and persist puts the -1/-1 counter.
Yeah.
So like persist, and then Malira for the old timers,
Yeah.
or any number of things now.
Yeah. Murderous Redcap.
Murderous Redcap.
If you make your Redcap a plant, then
Oh. I hadn't thought about making the thing
yeah.
a plant. I was
Yeah.
just like, just like make an army of plants.
No, make it the plant.
Yeah, like that's interesting. Then you just need a sack outlet and it does the
Right.
thing. What is that stupid blue card from like Ixalan? Where it like
Arcane adaptation.
maybe it makes everything you get to like name a creature type,
Yeah.
and everything is that. Or goodness. Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. But this card does neat things. Or like, this is what like imagine you have a bunch of creatures and like you have a relic. And you like target yourself and you just exile a creature.
Yep.
Then you make a plant and you make all your other plants bigger.
Yeah.
So like there are numerous ways to have a card leave your graveyard, or a creature leave your graveyard. Like investigate is probably what they were thinking you would do.
Right.
But
Collect evidence.
collect evidence. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of different ways. Like even like, gosh, casting a Croxa.
Yep. Oh yeah, escaping. Yep.
Yeah. So like any number.
You'd get two. Those are two separate instances, so you get 2 plants and 2 +1/+1 counters, right?
Yeah,
Because
I would think
you would escape and a creature would leave, and then this would trigger, and then
You'd pay the
when
cost.
Croxa enters,
Yeah, well, when he went on the stack.
Yeah.
So like the way it would work is you put it on the stack first. That would trigger
and then you
this.
pay the cost.
Then you pay the cost, and it should do it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, like so there are like interesting things you may not consider that like work with this.
Another thing that I was thinking that was kind of cool with this card was Dryad Arbor.
Oh, like you play a Dryad Arbor and then like it gets huge.
No, Dryad Arbor is not a plant.
Oh, it's
but
not a plant, okay.
It's a creature into land. So you could like Ren and 6 it back, make a plant,
Oh yeah.
put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Colony Garden gives you a free plant.
It does. Crucible of Worlds could let you play your Dryad Arbor.
That new green card that like puts
Yeah,
lands
we're
on
gonna
battlefield.
we're gonna talk about
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I hadn't thought about like our one creature land, or
Yep.
land creature, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, this card just has a lot of like little things, and like I've got to look back at the cube, but this feels like a card that you put in, and then there's just enough like stuff
Random stuff that
happening
works
in
with
the
it.
cube that like you could just like have a deck that is just I've got to find this, and then shenanigans ensue.
Yeah, like the sneaky archetypes, I think a lot of times are the most fun. Like you have your main archetypes that you're like building into the cube or your set.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times, even like with a normal set release, you'll have that one sneaky archetype. Like there was the walls archetype or gates or, whatever caves.
Caves if it got there. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever the sneaky archetype is, the 5-color archetype
Yeah,
or
but
whatever.
there's definitely like, from like doing the cube, So like there are in this set, there's gonna be a couple cards that make it that care about you sacrificing artifacts,
Hmm.
and so then you like. I don't think I have it in the cube now. I have to look, but like Oni called Anvil. You
Hmm.
put that card in. Now you can like have this Grixis sacrifice like artifact sacrifice deck that has like a few random payoffs and like is it, but then you
Right.
have the enabler in or an enabler in red black,
Right.
or you have insidious roots, and so like now you have a way to win the game if like you have a persist creature but like
Hmm.
no blood artist. You're like, oh, here's another way I can do this, or like Haunted Dead now gets to be a madness enabler,
Yeah.
plus it then gets to trigger this.
Yeah.
And so you have these little things where we've talked about it before, like the pocket synergies, but
Hmm.
then you like specifically you put in like, okay, if you get this card, it changes the value of these other cards. Or
Yeah.
like, hey, I want to care about sacrificing artifacts.
Hmm.
So now I really want to have this artifact that sacrifices things. So
Yep.
it's interesting. And like this does give you again, like if you get this pack one, pick one, maybe there are cards you would never ever normally think about.
Right.
But you're like, oh man, I have to get this because it
Yep.
works so well with this. And like I
Reassembling skeleton.
exactly like
Yeah.
or oh gosh, what is he called? Gravecrawler.
Yep.
Bloodsoak
Bloodgast.
Champion, Bloodgast. Like yeah, like now these cards do an extra thing.
Hmm.
Um, not not that it is like a workable deck anymore. Rest in peace, my boy. Um, but like
Hmm.
dredge my thing.
Yep.
It came out of the graveyard. Get a plant. Two
Yep.
Narcomoeba triggers. Get two plants. Put counters.
Two
Like
plants.
now you have this like
Prized
weird
amalgam, get a
alternate.
plant.
Yeah, this weird alternate way to like win the game. No, it's
Yep.
probably not good, but like it is something that you could like do that you didn't have access to before. And
Hmm.
then, oh yeah, by the way, they just like make it so you get to like conflagrate someone for like 1 million because you made all these plants.
Um, I mean, that actually seems really good. This might be a sneaky way to kind of revitalize Dredge.
Yeah, I mean it is awkward that like usually like Dredge wants to have cards that like are good both in and out of the graveyard.
Yeah.
So like if this is in the graveyard, then like you like missed your thing. But like if you have it on turn two and then you're like Dredge, I guess I don't. Each instance of Dredge is different. So if you dredge 3 creatures,
Hmm.
I think you would get 3 plants because they're different. Each dredge is a different instance.
Well, this is when they leave your graveyard.
Yeah. So like you have 3 stinkweed imps.
Yeah.
You dredge the first one for 5.
Oh,
Stinkweed imp comes out. Then you dredge the next
yes,
one. So there are 3 different instances of a
yeah.
different stinkweed imp leaving. So you get 3
I wasn't even
plants.
thinking about that, and I was just thinking about Narcomoebas and prized amalgams.
Yeah,
But
like
like,
each dredge should give you a
yeah,
plant.
this almost acts like a bridge, though.
On some, yeah, but like a
Instead of
bridge where
making
you're,
two twos,
it can make
yeah, I mean
huge
you got to pay
changes.
for it. It doesn't work out of your graveyard, but yeah, instead of making two twos, you're making like O1s that are gigantic.
that get enormous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so like we've just rattled off a bunch of things you can do with this, and we don't know if any of them are good. Like you have to try, and maybe you can like be like the Dredge idea from the guy who played Dredge for years is probably not good. But like this is a card that again, this is why these are interesting. It gets you thinking about different things you can do, and that's exciting. Like there's still part of me like as as a scientist, right? Like when you want to like be the first person to do something or do something interesting and new, and like these cards give you like the hope that you can find the neat, interesting thing to do with them,
Yeah.
as opposed to just like net decking a thing
Right.
or like waiting on the hive mind to come up with the best thing. You're like, oh, like I have this like neat idea. I
Yeah.
wonder if anyone has thought of this or has found this other card that might work with this.
Yep.
Also, changelings. They're
Changelings
plants.
are plants.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Play the changeling
Insidious roots. It's
outcast.
what plants crave.
Changeling outcast into insidious roots into
Oh yeah.
profit somehow.
Yes.
All right. So, welcome to part 1 of our 2-part special. As we are
Now that we're almost an hour in,
yeah, we're 45 minutes in and haven't talked about a single card on our list.
we talked about a card.
We talked about a card. Deep analysis on this one.
It's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. All right.
I'm glad we talked about that other stuff too, though.
It's Golgari. Of course you like that card. Of course.
Of course.
All right. So we have we're going to start on white.
Like always.
Like always. And so we have assemble the players. This is 1 on a white for an enchantment. A line of text I love putting on cards nowadays. You may look at the top card of your library at any time.
Yep.
And then once each turn, you may cast a creature with power 2 or less from the top of your library. So I thought of this as like a sideboard card against like control.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where like you just get to like hopefully play cards off the top and like accrue a little bit of value here and there. Now, I've heard some other analysis where it's like, well, the times that there's just a land on top, it sucks. And like the fact that it's once per turn is really limiting. It is, but it is like a way to just like slowly draw extra cards. Like, let's say you play this against Rakdos, and you hit like 2 cards off the top over the course of like a turn or two. You're like, oh hey, like I've kind of like clawed my way back ahead.
I mean,
Or at
another
least
thing you
even.
could do is you could play this in spirits where your creatures all have flash.
That was another thing I thought as well, was like this is like a bunch of them have flash naturally,
Yeah.
and then Rattle Chains gives them all flash anyway.
Yep.
I also thought I had to go look this card up. Where's it at? There it is. It is Errant and Giada. The 1 blue-white legendary human angel with flash and flying. You may look at the top card of your library at any time.
Mm-hmm.
You may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. Like, you could kind of set up a between these two things where you just have that effect kind of all the time.
Yeah.
And you just get to kind of, like, work your way through your deck. So it just gives you a way to, like, kind of grind and chew through stuff. Now, Errant Giada hasn't, like, taken off, but, like, kind of also, like, a spirits thing. But if you're trying to, like, deal with a removal-heavy deck, you don't want your answer to be a creature.
Right.
You want it to be an enchantment.
Doesn't 3 mana Vivian from War let you cast creatures at instant speed also?
Is it just the ones that that are exiled with her?
No, I think it's any creature.
No, we're not getting there. We're gonna find it. Don't you worry. I just can't spell, so it makes it very hard for me to find cards.
So that's why Gavin doesn't want you to read to him.
Yeah. No, you're right. You may cast creature spells as though they had flash. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just some way to like give you a way to like break the restriction of once per turn.
Yeah. Or if you could find a way to clear the top of your deck, that would help as well.
But like, it seems like a solid like sideboard card for like a creature heavy deck. Like, you know, probably less useful in like Amalia combo. Like all those cards have less than 2 power.
Right.
But like, you know, you already have return from the ranks.
Mm-hmm.
So like, like maybe you don't need this, but it is a way that like, if you're afraid your opponent's gonna like shut off your graveyard.
Yeah.
Right. Though this still does get hosed by what is he called? Grafdigger's Cage.
Yes. Yeah, because Grafter Digger's Cage is from anywhere.
Yeah, or library and graveyard or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's you still have that issue, but like if you think they're like a rest in peace gamer or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can like take out my return to the ranks and put and assemble the players.
Yeah, the only downside to this card is it's kind of a victim of 2023, 2024 now I guess Magic, where you cast it and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, as I
Now
said,
it's only 2 mana, so like
like it's
that might be all right,
hopefully
but
not your 2-drop. Like
yeah.
you've played a game, you've gotten like Raft, and then you like stick this on like turn 5 or something, and then you
Yeah.
like cross your fingers and hope that there's something on top. And now, granted, like if on top is another assemble the players, like you just you played yourself,
Right.
but or it played you. But yeah, the hope is that like you play it, then you like get a card off the top, and you're like, okay, now I can start to like get my way back in.
Yep. All right. Next up, we have Case of the Uneaten Feast. Single white mana for a rare enchantment case. The first step, yeah, we'll go with step, is whenever a creature enters a battlefield under your control, you gain a life. The second step is to solve, you've gained 5 or more life this turn. And the third step is solved. When sacrifice this case, creature cards in your graveyard gain. You may cast this from card from your graveyard until the end of the turn.
Um, so like I've seen people talk about this in Amalia,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's pretty solid. It could be solid there, but I think it like if you're like the collected company version of the deck,
Yeah.
like you don't want to have a not a creature,
Miss. Yeah.
right? If you are, like I've been playing, whatever it is, Ranger Captain Eos or whatever the Convoke guy,
Yeah.
Knight Errant of Eos or whatever it is. Like you don't want to have not a creature. Like this
Right.
could maybe replace return to the ranks, and like give or like, but like that's really good because you can just win the game when you're tapped out,
Right.
right? So like I think it's interesting, and I
Mm-hmm. It's
mean
definitely interesting.
it is the Saffron Olive special of This Is Good in Soul Sisters.
Yes.
But like I guess like could it like be good in like Angels? Like if you really wanted like another
Maybe.
life gain effect, and then you would
Yeah.
like benefit from like pseudo wrath protection.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to use the like sack this. Your creatures can be cast from your graveyard like right away. Like you could like
Right. Bank it for later.
solve it and then wait, and then after like okay you have to wrath me or die, then
Yeah.
you get wrathed. Then like the next turn you crack it, and then you like play 2 or 3 things, and you're like okay now I'm like I'm like back in it. Or like if you had what is it Bishop of Wings,
Yep.
and then like you got a bunch of spirits, and then you just like brought back your Valkyrie and made them big enough to win the game off of this. Like
Yeah.
that's reasonable. Like it's just awkward in Amalia because like you want a creature in that spot to
Yeah.
some degree.
Yeah, it's especially handy, especially if you're playing Return to Ranks, that your soul sister is a creature as well.
Because you can bring it back. Because like I've definitely had games
Well,
where
not
like
just that you can bring it back, but you can bring it back and start the chain.
start the like win the game on the spot, or
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say I've definitely had times where like you get your board wrath and you just are like, okay, I have 5 mana, do thing.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're in a you have to kill this again, and I've explored my way to the next return to the ranks. And so when
Yeah.
you kill this, I'm going to do this again.
Yeah.
So this doesn't have that, but it feels like they knew what they did with Amalia, and it almost feels like they were like, we should give this another way to work.
Yeah.
And like I think it's fine for that, but like and 5 life like is awkward. Like just because like when you combo off, you do this,
Right.
but like it's like you have to like it's like what some combination of like Soul Sisters, uh Wild Growth Walker, and then like a Cenote Scout,
Hmm.
right? Which is like not undoable, but like you usually gain life in like chunks of like 1, 2, or 102.
Yeah.
Like you usually don't get to 5 a whole lot. It's
Well,
like
like five is an interesting number though because it's more than somebody is going to incidentally gain in a turn, but not completely far fetched in a life gain deck. Like if you're playing a life gain deck, 5 is average, like an Angels or whatever.
yeah,
Like you're gonna gain 5 life a turn.
like if you go like this into Bishop into Valkyrie, you gain
Yeah,
5.
right.
So maybe that's where they were seeing it. But like yeah, like 3 you can just kind of like back into
Yeah.
like on accident.
Well,
Like
like even yeah, I mean crack a food and like you got 3
yeah.
life. Like incidentally, decks could gain 3 life.
Yeah, but like
5 life is like you kind of have to be a life gain deck.
you have to mean it.
Yeah. Yep. Like you said, you're not gonna back into 5 life a turn.
Yeah, you're going to be like I really like did a lot to get here. All right,
Yeah.
what do we have up next?
This is Delney Streetwise Lookout. 2 and a white for a 2/2 legendary human scout. Creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked with creatures with power 3 or greater. And if an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less triggers, that ability triggers an additional time.
I was all game to like I was like, oh, I should get some of these, blah blah blah. But then I saw it was a mythic,
Yeah.
and I was like, it's gonna be like $40 or like something dumb as like the like.
Where are you trying to put it?
Well, so again, like having played a lot of Amalia as of late, right? Like this, like you go, life gain creature, life gain creature. This
Yeah.
you gain 4 life for this coming into play because
It's
both of
true.
them trigger twice. And then like if you play an Amalia, you would get like until Amalia gets 1 counter on it, you double up all of the explorers. Right? 'Cause
All of Amalia's explorers.
yeah. So like if you went
Yeah.
like
I
if you
mean, you
had
still get double the explorers from the other stuff because you're still gaining
so you would
life.
get 4 explorers off because you would like
Right.
would you or would you get 3? So let's say you have life gain creature in this and you play Amalia. It doesn't have 2 power. So you gain a life that puts 2 explore triggers on the stack.
Right.
If you hit a counter, then the remaining life gain trigger only triggers it once.
Right.
So like you get at least 1 extra explore, if not 2. Like if you hit land,
Yeah.
then you get like 2 more. But like you double up all of those like life gain triggers. Like I'm playing 1 whatever was it, not extraction specialist. Like I'm playing like kind of an older list. The sideboard has changed, but like you could put this in for like an extraction specialist. So then when you like board in your Skyclave apparition, it gets to get 2 things.
Yeah.
When you like your Night of Autumn, you would get to choose. So you get a 4/3 that like 8 an enchantment or artifact.
Yeah. So I got another question for you.
Okay.
Would this make Amalia combo lists for standard? Because this could act like a quasi wild growth walker.
How so?
You would just not go infinite with it. Like, I mean, you could make a giant Amalia over the course of a couple turns instead of all
Oh.
at once with just like
Yeah.
doubling your explorers.
Yeah, because you're gonna. Yeah, you definitely could.
Oh no, I guess you wouldn't gain a life.
No, you wouldn't. So
You'd need a soul sister.
you need a soul sister, because
Yeah.
each time then a creature would play, you would get 2 explorers.
Yeah.
But that's like an awful lot of value,
Oh yeah.
right? Like, you
I mean,
know,
that's what made the old Golgari deck good was like the incidental value that you got off all your bad cards.
yeah. So like, I don't know if it like would change a Malian standard, but like there could be, like again, this into like Skyclave eat 2 things is
Mm.
like really good, or um, gosh, I'm trying to think of other like Elvish Visionary, draw two
Yeah.
cards.
Draw 2
Right?
cards.
There's a lot of ways this can be good. Like I like maybe I have 2024 brain, and
Yeah.
like I was like, oh, this is a rare.
Yeah.
Like I did not think it was a mythic.
Well,
And
I don't know that this has like general broad appeal where it's going to be like a $40 card though.
I
Like its use cases are kind of narrow.
they are, but like I don't know, like is someone gonna want to like put this in their, like make this their commander? Do they have some like little like itty bitty creature ETB deck, and like this
Well,
becomes like
I think single colored legends are hard because
fair?
they have less appeal than multicolored cards for
Also,
commander.
like in like generic humans,
Yeah.
double your reflector mages,
Yeah, that's
double
pretty good.
your Thalia's lieutenants.
Another thing just on rereading this is that this doesn't care if it's an ETB trigger or not.
Just anything, yeah.
So if you like curiosity something,
Mm.
you get to draw 2 cards.
Also, with Coppercoat Vanguard,
Mm-hmm.
you have to pay Ward 1 twice.
Yep. What about with toxic? This would trigger toxic twice, right?
Is that a triggered ability? It
I
is,
think so.
right?
Yeah.
It might, yeah.
Oh, so this so this would actually be pretty cool with venerated rot priest then.
Oh, Venerated Rot Police for sure it would trigger. Oh yeah, like you would just get
Yeah.
like that a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Like Rot Priest, then like whatever Jawbone guy, and then this, and you're just like, target
You're
something, I
dead.
dare you, and you die on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe this is good in humans, or like that, like as like, ETBs are easier,
Yeah.
but but like Athalia's lieutenant, like putting 2 counters on all of your creatures.
That's big game for 2 mana.
Yeah, like that's huge. Like that, like, oh, like what's her name? Adeline would make 2 tokens when you attack.
Yeah, what about oh shoot,
Rabble Master would make 2.
all of the Rabble Masters would make 2.
Yeah.
I was thinking from Zendikar Rising. Put a counter on a creature every turn.
Oh, Luminarch Aspirant.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like there's all these like humany white weenie things that, like, this has the problem of it's not good by itself,
Yeah,
but it's like
a
it's
3 mana do nothing.
but it's really good if you have like one other enabler,
Mm-hmm.
right? If your deck's just full of stupid enablers.
Yep. It's
Um,
also on color for Skrev.
Skrelv,
Skrelv, yeah.
Skrev, Skrelv, yeah, yeah. I guess like if you, oh no, that's an activated ability. Never mind. So yeah, like it like works in a lot of different like weird spots,
Yeah.
but like, I was like, oh, I'll get some of these and set them aside. Like, this is a card I might play, but it's like, how expensive are you going to be?
Only one way to find out.
And again, this might be like well, it's $40. I'm not going to buy this.
Yeah.
Oh, it's $3. Sure, kind of
Cool
deal.
card though.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. Next up, we have Doorkeeper Thrall. 1 and a white for a 1/2 creature Thrall with flash and flying. Artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield cause abilities. I threw this one on the list because it does. I mean, it doesn't work with Lotus Field because it's just
It doesn't.
artifacts and creatures, but it does work with Uro and Kroxa.
It does.
It does work with all the pitch elementals.
Mm-hmm. Like that hasn't like been a thing because we have Hushbringer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't get the effect from it, but you get to
Yeah,
keep your
you get
thing.
to keep it. Um, Also, like it has flash,
Hmm.
so usually like Hushbringer,
Yeah.
they see it and they go, "I'm gonna wait till I kill this to cast my thing with an ETB ability." Here
Yep.
they have to commit the mana, and then
Right.
you slide this underneath it,
Yep.
and then they don't. They've committed the mana and they don't get their like trigger,
Right.
which is kind of big game because you've like made them play presumably their big haymaker,
Hmm. And it didn't do anything.
and it didn't do anything. Um, there's not really any artifacts that matter with this.
Yeah, I couldn't think of any
I
artifacts.
I mean, Phyrexian Dreadnought, but like no one plays that card.
Oh yeah.
Like, are there? I can't think of. There are a bunch of
Oh,
like.
Phyrexian Portal? Not Portal. The 9 mana thing makes you sack 3 creatures.
Oh, I guess if they, yeah, I guess if they play that,
Yeah.
then you play that. Like, I was trying to think of beneficial things for you, but yeah, like
Yeah.
that's still like
Yeah.
big game. You do this. Um, yeah, like I I think it's funny that like we have all these cards that care about that like are powerful because they have ETB abilities,
Hmm.
and then that then forces wizards to go into the design space of like, oops, these are too good. And so like
Yeah.
you like build your decks because things have ETB abilities. See Amalia, see elementals, right?
Yeah.
Or even fires, right? Like fires is a deck that like your creatures have ETB abilities,
Hmm.
and then now you have this, and you're just like, I guess my deck doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is significantly easier to kill than an Elishnorn.
Oh yeah.
I will give it that. I will
It's
give
also
it that.
significantly easier to cast.
Yeah. Well, like I've started like in Amalia, so like again, I play a version that has the whatever Ranger Captain or Knight Errant, whatever it is,
Yeah.
the Convoke guy that lets you get creatures. So like in my sideboard, I have Murderous Riders. Like you can't cord for them,
Right.
but like you can find them off of like the Convoke guy early on, hopefully,
Hmm.
and then have it to kill a an Elishnorn, as
Yeah.
opposed to like just having everything be ETB. It's like I'm gonna have a few like adventure creatures that I can find different ways,
Hmm.
and like I can like have a Skyclave apparition that I can cord for, but I can also have this thing I can just draw and kill
Yep.
the thing that's turning off my deck. And like it might be a situation where you have to have more things like that or like take it into account
Hmm.
as opposed to because like this is just super annoying.
Yeah.
And like there's now 12 of these effects,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just like you are to the point where like a Bant deck that is like these plus Uro or
Hmm.
some other negative like ETB trigger thing is just like a reasonable deck. You have enough redundancy in this effect
Yeah.
that like now you just need enough of the things that like enter and do a bad thing
Right.
to be like, oh, I would prefer it not do the bad thing. Okay.
Yep.
So, all right.
All right. Next one we have is No Witnesses. 2 white white for a sorcery. Each player who controls the most creatures investigates, then destroy all creatures. So we have basically Wrath of God in standard.
Mm-hmm.
The other versions of this that we've had have, like, whoever won the contest or whatever, have just given them a card's worth of value. This makes them commit 2 mana to get that card value. So quite a bit better in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, if for some reason you have 2 creatures and they have an attract, so you get the clue,
That is true. Could be
which
upside.
weird. Also,
Yep.
like, this feels like an artifact of we like changed rotation after we put all these cards in warehouses because
Yeah.
like this was supposed to be the depopulate replacement,
Yes.
and instead it's like uh I don't know if you there was a Saffron Olive video last week that was like oops all ras
No, no, I didn't see that.
only played 27 lands and 36 ras. And that's before this.
Yeah.
He had to go into black for like there's the battle that's a wrath,
Yeah.
and then there's perish or whatever.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, there's just so many wraths. Like, and it's fine. Like, I think wraths have gotten worse just because the creatures now like give so much value when they come into play.
Yeah.
But like, you are right. The fact that it's like now you've got to like kind of skip part of your next turn to try to get your card back.
Yeah.
Or I have definitely like had my opponent like get lost something,
Hmm.
and then before I have a chance to use the things, cast farewell,
Yeah.
and then eat them, eat the map tokens or whatever,
Yeah.
and you just like don't get anything for it, and you're just like, oh. So like I could definitely like wrath, then reboard, not use your clue, and then your opponent's like, well, farewell, get artifacts as well. Now you got kind of nothing for this.
Yep.
And then perhaps the most powerful card in the set.
Perhaps.
It is Novice Inspector. It is white for a human detective. And when it enters the battlefield, investigate. And it's a 1/2.
It's a 1/2.
This is I did not know that Thraben Inspector had access to the Omen Paths or was a planeswalker. But this is exactly our boy Thraben Inspector.
Yep.
A a 1/2 that draws a card on the installment plan is pretty good. Also, like, makes a body or makes an artifact for you to Gleeful Demolition in the Convoke deck is also pretty good. I don't know if you are 8 Thraben Inspectors, no whatever he's called. Oh, name. The Valdarin Epicure. Like
Okay.
where you like get rid of that.
Yeah.
Or if you are or if you're like 12 1-drops that make an artifact for your Gleeful Demolition.
Yeah.
Right, like the upside of Novice Inspector over Valdarin Epicure in the Convoke decks is they pay for your creature. Like they pay for Loxodon and they pay for whatever, Knight Errant. Where like if you go like Epicure, play your second land, Gleeful Demolition, you might not have the right colors
Yeah.
to cast your Convoke creature, but with this you will.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't know how important that 1 damage is. Like I guess you're a deck that like needs to do exactly 20 damage, so it might matter. Or maybe you like cut, oh gosh, Resolute Reinforcements. And you're like, well, I'd rather have this extra artifact that's like a little bit like grindier than like the 2 bodies.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like this card's definitely going to have a home.
I guess my question is, 3-bit Inspector was basically a staple in its time in Standard. And Magic has changed an awful lot in the following 5 years, or how it's been since Shadows came out.
Longer than 5 years.
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely been longer than 5 years.
Because the podcast has been going for 5 years, and that was Guilds.
Yeah. Okay, so a long time ago. Does this card still have a home in Standard like 3-bit Inspector did, or has Magic moved this being powerful?
I think Magic has probably moved past this being powerful. Is my thought. Like there were so few, like that card got played in like Mardu vehicles. There were so few other ways to like generate card advantage.
Yeah.
Like actual card advantage in that deck. That like 3-bit Inspector was like a really big deal. And I guess it got played other places too. But
yeah,
like
I mean,
now,
it was in all the Wait We Need decks of the time.
Like, now it feels like there are just so many cards that had incidental value stuck to them that, like, you just, like, you don't need that, like, extra card draw. And, like, maybe it makes its way into mono white, because, like, mono white has, the 1/2 that like grows when you attack with a training.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and then I don't know what the other 1-drop is the 1/2 that like for 4 mana you get to look at cards and put a creature in your hand. Right? Like, this is probably worse than both of those, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, like, and then the rest of the cards in the deck I think are fine. Like, I don't think there's like a super weak card that you're like, oh hey, I really need to have this additional, like 1-drop. It's not like you're like super hard up for 1-drops, especially like in a 3-year Standard. Right? Like you're always like, there's always gonna be like random uncommon 2/1.
Yeah.
In white that has like some ability that like makes it fine. That like probably pushes this out. So like probably not, which is kind of sad.
That is sad.
Like 3-bit Inspector was like one of the best cards in Mardu vehicles, strangely enough.
I mean, it was a good card to be good too.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's a common. It was cheap. It was fun to play. It was good for various limited environments.
And it was like
a ton of cubes.
And it was fair. Like it wasn't a card that felt broken or like felt like your opponent was like running away with the game. Like it didn't snowball, right? It was like, oh, I'm like out of cards. I guess I get to draw an extra card this turn, like on turn 6.
Yeah.
As opposed,
that's probably why it's not good anymore, because it doesn't snowball.
It doesn't snowball. As opposed to, Ragavan, where you're like, oh, like I just get the card for free. And the mana to cast it. Amazing. So like it's a very different world. But like this card, trust us, this card was good back in the day. So we have a choice to make.
I was just gonna ask you the same thing.
We are an hour 15 in. We could just leave them on wait and then come back and finish off the other one after we had our deep thoughts about signposts, uncommons, and the changing face of Magic. So we promise them maybe a part 2, and this will give people time to give us some feedback.
Absolutely, I think we call it here. We didn't have as many cards this time around as next time. We definitely can't get through them all, but we might as well have a full episode for next week. So
so we'll just call it here.
Yep.
We'll let you guys ponder any white cards we may have missed, and then I will say we are a little thin on blue and green cards. So if you have any blue or green cards that you're like, you should totally talk about these, let us know.
Hit us up.
So with all that, I think we got a show.
We got a show.
So if you are going to hit us up, Facebook, Discord, X, email, all those links in the description. Go check them out. Let us know what blue cards we need to talk about.
Absolutely. And if you want to support the show, as always, there's two ways you can do it. Our TCG player affiliate link, casualtryhard.com/TCG, or our Patreon, patreon.com/casualtryhardmtg. Either way supports the show. We really appreciate it and hope you'll help us out.
Yeah. So with that, we'll catch you on the internets.
We'll catch you on the internets.